Sly Cooper, Rise of Vexen. Written by Tatsumari Korisuno. Fox, Carmelita M. June 10th, 2016. Paris.
It's been 3 years since Sly disappeared. The short time I spent with Sly on the right side of the law was enjoyable, but I may have been kidding myself, thinking he had changed. Deep down, I felt I lost a piece of my life without chasing him, but something else came of it. Something better. My work at Interpol helps ease Sly's loss, but I just can't let him go. I keep waking up every morning, half hoping that a report would come with Sly's signature written all over it. While Interpol allowed me to use their facilities for a year in my search for Sly, I couldn't find a single clue about when or where he went. Interpol forced me to give up the investigation 6 months ago, so instead, I searched for him using my vacation time and connections I've made over the years. I have yet to find so much as a hint.
Carmelita sighed as she finished her journal entry. With a few clicks, she saved the document in a well-hidden part of her hard drive, leaning back in her chair and looking up at the ceiling of her office. A calendar hanging on the filing cabinet caught her attention, rolling her head to the side and staring at the date. Had it been 3 years since Sly went missing? Carmelita had done everything that she could, yet there was nothing to show for it. After letting the thought mull through her tired brain, Carmelita reached up to stretch. A tattered photo on her desk drew her gaze as she sat back up. It depicted her caught by surprise when Sly kissed her on the cheek. She found it in the wreckage of Le Paradox's blimp after stopping him from rewriting history. She missed his soft fur against her cheek and the way he would smirk every time she walked into the room. A hard knock on her door shocked her out of her trance.
Come in,
She called, straightening her back as her boss walked in.
There's someone by the name of Mr. Shelley here to see you, Miss Fox. He says there's something important to talk to you about,
he said gruffly. Carmelita nodded her approval as her boss signaled outside the door. A hunched-over form seated in a wheelchair rolled in, their face wrapped in a scarf and dressed in a heavy coat. After the door shut, Carmelita's eyes lit up in surprise when Bentley pulled the scarf from his face.
Hey, Carmelita! Good thing I had my trusty Junior Digi-Scout scarf. How have you been?
He smiled, careful not to speak too loudly as his stuffy-nosed voice tended to be, leaning up in his chair a bit to hug Carmelita.
It's good to see you, Bentley. I've been hanging in there. After Sly disappeared, I was able to bring most of the international criminals to justice, but it's left a void where only amateurs try to fill the space left behind.
She slumped into her chair, patting a stack of folders on the side of her desk while Bentley rolled to the front.
Have you found anything concerning Sly?
Carmelita sighed at the question.
I haven't been able to find anything. It's as if he just disappeared altogether.
Bentley slumped back into his wheelchair, tapping his finger on the armrest as he spoke.
I've been searching non-stop, but I haven't been able to find anything either. Even the Thieves raccoonist hasn't provided any new clues.
Both of them sat silently, listening to the dull bustle of the Interpol office before Bentley sat up in his chair and folded his hands, rubbing his thumbs together.
I just feel like there's nowhere left to search. I know that Sly would never give up on any of us, so it's the least I can do for him.
Bentley groaned with a low voice. Carmelita felt a tear sting the corner of her eye before sitting up and leaning onto her desk to change subjects.
How's Murray been doing? I haven't seen him since Sly disappeared.
Bentley chuckled and pushed a button, bringing up a holographic sports page.
Murray's actually on his way to being a heavyweight wrestling champion this year. You'd hardly recognize him. He's slimmed down and bulked up a ton. He even wears pants.
Carmelita laughed, imagining the hefty pink hippo sporting a huge gold belt buckle and flexing as hard as he could for the camera.
I have no doubt he'll do it.
She grinned, reading over the holographic page for a moment.
So, what brings you to the station? In disguise, even. You've been under the radar this entire time.
Carmelita asked, sitting back in her chair, looking in Bentley's direction. Immediately, Bentley reached into his pocket and pulled from it a stiff, yellowing piece of paper.
I've actually come to give you this. I found it while cleaning up some of Sly's stuff that fell over. As for the disguise, you might not be looking for me, but Interpol sure is,"
he explained. Carmelita had just taken the paper from Bentley's grip when Carmelita's boss walked in.
Hey, Fox! Deadeye's at it again.
Carmelita quickly pulled her hand back to hide the paper as Bentley turned in his chair, facing away from the door.
Deadeye? Didn't I arrest him for that heist in Japan?
Carmelita asked, tucking the paper into her skirt pocket and reaching for her trusty shock pistol within her desk drawer, slamming a battery pack into the handle.
You did, but someone broke him out. Dimitri says Deadeye and whoever was helping him stowed away on a plane headed for Egypt.
Once she had holstered her pistol, Carmelita reached into one of her many filing cabinets and pulled the folder so she could refresh her memory.
All right, I'll be on my way in a few,
she said. The captain began closing the door, then stopped and looked closer at the wheelchair facing away from him before leaving. Carmelita was so absorbed in the file she forgot Bentley and silently hung her head while a single tear rolled down her snout.
"You still think about him, don't you?"
Bentley asked, turning around and rolling over to her.
What?
But her attempts to explain away what she had unknowingly revealed were for naught, slowly nodding.
"I'm sure that wherever or whenever Sly is, he's thinking about you too,"
Bentley assured, patting her hand before wrapping his face once again and rolling out the door with Carmelita, who drove to the airport. Memories from long ago came to mind on the way. The first time she had heard the name Sly Cooper was when she was fresh out of the academy. That first meeting would lead to her following that damned Ringtail all over the world, only to have to settle for the criminals he had so aptly taken down. Her chasing him would lead to their first kiss after bringing down that mechanical warlock Clockwork. It surprised her, yes, but it felt exhilaratingly natural. There was something more she missed. It wasn't the chasing or her near captures. It was the fun she had doing so. When she was finally aboard and sitting down, she heard the note in her pocket crumple. Quickly, she pulled it out and opened it carefully to avoid tearing the aged paper when something fell out of it and under the seat. With a quick move, she reached down and pulled out an expensive-looking diamond ring. Finely etched designs in the band swirled around her first name, written in a thin calligraphic font. When the flight attendants began the oh-so-boring safety routine, she remembered the note. The neat handwriting on it looked more like a personal script.
1. Take her out to an early dinner. 2. Walk around town making small talk. 3. Take her to the Eiffel Tower. 4. Begin just as the sun begins to set. My dear Carmelita, we've known each other for quite some time. While our meetings in the past may not have been under the best of circumstances, I learned to enjoy our little rendezvous. But these past 2 years have made me realize that while our relationship may have been fun, it was lacking. I've wanted to ask you this for some time, but I felt that stealing a ring would ruin everything you stand for and what I would love to build. And so, after a few months of hard work, I've purchased this ring in hopes of asking you this one question. Note, kneel at this part, Cooper. Carmelita Montoya Fox, will you marry me?
Tears began to well in her eyes as she finished the note, wiping one of them away and holding up the ring to the light, almost able to see Sly kneeling before her with the ring in hand, eager for her answer.
Damn you, Ringtail,
she thought as she smiled and slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. Emotions within her heart overflowed as she bowed her head and softly cried, while the roar of the plane's engines rose. Once the plane reached its cruising altitude, she fell asleep, dreaming of Cooper and his daring capers, all the while giving chase. Every time she was about to catch him, he would disappear in a puff of smoke. She jerked to a stop when she felt Sly's hands around her waist and his chin resting on her shoulder.
I hear you've been looking for me?
He asked. Carmelita tried to answer, but her voice wouldn't make any noise. She turned around to face him, only to find him gone.
You've gotten rusty, Inspector,
Sly teased, making her whirl around to see him standing on the balcony railing, saluting before jumping off as she reached for him, but waking as the plane descended. Wiping her eyes, she retrieved her bag from in front of her, eager to disembark and get busy again so she wouldn't be distracted by these memories. As she drove to the station, the endless dunes reminded her of the uncomfortable performance she gave to a group of apes in Arabia during their visit to Sly's ancestor, Salim al-Kupar. The inspector never revealed it to any of them, especially Sly, that Carmelita was secretly trying to catch Cooper's eye in the final seconds of that dance. After briefing the local Interpol office on Deadeye, Carmelita was escorted to the museum and briefed about the stolen piece. A small portion of ancient Egyptian art from the days of Tutankhamun, estimated at 4.6 million. In its place was a poorly constructed calling card in the shape of a cartoon pistol. Carmelita let out a frustrated growl. It wasn't because it was another criminal she had to hunt down. It was that there were so many thieves out there attempting to take Sly's place. Most of these would-be master thieves even copied his signature of leaving behind a calling card. As Carmelita calmed herself into a working rhythm, her eye caught something familiar on another tablet beside her. Scanning over the tablet, one image made her blood run cold. A closer look at the worn pictures revealed Sly's famous cane among the angular images. Carmelita quickly covered her mouth, stifling her joy, sorrow, or she didn't know what to feel. As she panned her vision, she saw the unmistakable image of Sly with a large jewel in his hand, and right behind him, a platoon of guards giving chase. The inspector left the museum in a frustrated rage, telling the guards she was going back to the office for records and maybe getting a lead. Instead, Carmelita began searching the databanks of Interpol for anything related to Sly, all the way from his father until he disappeared. When she found a file that looked promising and went to open it, she was promptly blocked off by a security clearance warning.
Security clearance? Since when did I need security clearance?
She thought, trying to open another file. Again, she was barred by the security clearance warning.
What's going on here?
Just as she slammed her hands down on the desk, a very important-looking Doberman walked through the door.
Miss Fox, is it?
He asked with a smooth tone.
Who are you?
Carmelita demanded, drawing her pistol and charging the capacitors to maximum. The Doberman held up his hands and tilted his head slightly.
Easy there, Fox. My name is Darius Hunter, and I'm here at the request of the FBI.
He said, reaching into his pocket and producing the badge.
What would the United States FBI want with an Interpol officer?
She demanded, lowering her pistol, keeping her finger at the ready.
Not everyone got the memo concerning his files, it seems. We caught your searches on Sly Cooper through Interpol's database in recent months.
Hunter answered, walking in further and placing a card on the desk.
Again, how is that a concern of the FBI?
Carmelita asked.
The memo was sent out almost a year ago. Sly Cooper's case is to be turned over to the FBI as well as all evidence concerning him. His accomplices Murray and Bentley have been issued arrest warrants and are considered extremely dangerous. You haven't heard anything about their whereabouts, have you?
Carmelita raised an eyebrow and holstered her pistol. Something about this Darius Hunter didn't sit right with her.
I haven't heard anything for quite a while. Why the sudden interest? The Cooper gang was just a group of thieves that stole from other thieves.
She questioned, reaching for his card while sitting down. Darius narrowed his eyes and leaned on her desk.
That's classified and on a need-to-know basis, and you do not need to know. You do know that interference in an open case is against the law, don't you, Miss Fox?
The Doberman leaned in close enough that Carmelita could smell his overpowering cologne.
I am aware, but I still haven't heard anything about Bentley or Murray.
She answered flatly. Hunter narrowed his eyes, staring her in the eye for a long while.
If you do find anything, call the number on that card,
he announced, leaving Carmelita with a deep sense of mistrust rooted in her gut. There was something wrong with him, but she couldn't tell what it was. After searching through Sly's files on hand, Carmelita decided that a better look at the tablet would give some answers. As she neared the door, 2 FBI agents informed her that they would take over the investigation. She tried to get through by showing them her badge, even saying that she was there as a civilian. Ultimately, she was turned down and even escorted away, despite many other patrons being allowed entrance. She had to get another look at that tablet, maybe even get Bentley to look at it and possibly decrypt the pictures. But the FBI arrest warrant and swarming agents would make things difficult. Any exposure could lead to his arrest.
What to do?
When she couldn't think of any legal way to get into that museum, she slammed her hand down on the desk. Even if she could find a way in, Bentley would no doubt be caught. The ring on her finger glinted as it reflected the light into her eyes.
No, I can't.
She muttered, realizing that someone might be listening to her. With the FBI nearby, what choice did she have, though? Carmelita found a clue to when Sly was sent, and it offered her a chance to get him back. The only thing standing in her way was the very thing she had fought so hard to uphold: the law. With a huff, Carmelita slumped in her chair and stared up at the ceiling, holding up her hand and turning it to watch the light reflect off the gold. With a disappointed sigh, she lowered her hand to the bridge of her nose and shook her head.
I can't believe I'm doing this,
she thought, going to the roof, pulling out her cell phone and dialing Bentley's number, given to her soon after Sly's disappearance so they could all keep in touch.
Bentley? It's Carmelita. Good. And you? Listen, I know this will sound loco, but can you and Murray come to Egypt? There's just something I want to ask you in person. Do you have connections for transport? Alright, I'll be waiting for your call.